If we're going to learn to love homosexuals as Jesus would, we have to realize that the Christian church has a very sordid history on this issue. The televangelists of the 1980s malignantly characterized gay and lesbian people as pedophiles, while many Christians today are so busy trying to oppose homosexuals politically that we've barely taken the time to ask the question, how would Jesus love a homosexual? The first concept I want to illustrate is unconditional love. This kind of love requires that we acknowledge the social and personal struggles faced by gay and lesbian people in our culture, and that we fight to make our world a safe place for them. See, as much as the Christian church loves to trumpet the stories of people like me who've overcome homosexuality, much of the church has turned a cold shoulder to the needs of those who have embraced their homosexuality, implicitly sending them the message that they have to change their sexuality in order to become eligible for God's love. But real love doesn't say, I'll love you if you'll change this and that about yourself. Real love says, I love you regardless of whether or not you change. And in fact, that's the only kind of love that causes people to change. So what does this kind of love look like in real life? Liquid Church in New Jersey recently took 200 members of their church to the Gay Pride celebration in New Jersey. They made it their goal to serve the gay community through practical acts of kindness, like passing out cold water and emptying garbage cans. They called the event Gay Pride Meets Christian Humility. Even more controversial than that, the campus ministry that I'm a part of in Des Moines a while back was asked if we would loan our portable stage to the Gay and Lesbian Alliance on campus at the school nearby for a drag show. After some prayer and debate, the leadership of my church decided to say yes. Now, we may have taken some heat from other Christians who said that we were providing a platform for sinful behavior. There's a fun pun there if you think about it. But you know what? Our decision to loan them our stage broke down a wall that previously existed between our church and the gay community. And I realize this is controversial, but I just want to explain, the gay and lesbian people on campus at that college already knew that our church believes homosexuality is a sin. They already know that. We don't need to prove it to them by saying, by not loaning them our stage to prove that we believe it's a sin. They already know it's a sin. What they didn't know was that we cared about them as individuals. And that's what we accomplished by giving them our stage. And that's what it means to demonstrate the radical, extravagant grace of God to those in the gay and lesbian community. A lot of Christians have a really hard time with this. A lot of Christians have a really hard time seeing someone do something nice like this for the gay community, or take a stand against the mistreatment of gay and lesbian people without assuming they're also endorsing homosexuality. In fact, many Christians perceive any demonstration of God's grace whatsoever that's aimed towards those in the gay and lesbian community as implicitly being an endorsement of the sin of homosexuality. And that's why we have Christian parents who think they need permission to love their gay kids. People are so afraid their love will be perceived as an endorsement of sin that they just don't love. I mean, a question I get all the time, one of many questions I get is from parents whose son or daughter is gay. And they want to know if it's okay for them to invite their son or daughter's gay partner over to the house for Christmas or Thanksgiving. Yes, absolutely. Invite the gay partner over to your house. Make them a meal. Buy them gifts. Shower them with the love and grace of God. And that doesn't mean that you think homosexuality is okay. In fact, you'll probably have to, you may have to have some difficult conversations with them, and they'll be at a place in their life, I'm sure, where they realize how you feel about homosexuality, but that doesn't mean you can't love them. I had a dream a while back that I was living on the streets, and for an entire year, I was living on the streets, and I was sleeping on subways and eating out of garbage cans. And the reason I was living on the streets is because I did something wrong. And I was running from the police. And I don't remember what it was that I was supposed to have done wrong in the dream, but whatever it was, I knew that I did it. I knew that I was guilty. And whenever I saw even the faintest hint of a red light, or heard even the faintest sound of a siren, I started running. And for an entire year, I ran because I was convinced there was an angry judge out there that was just waiting to condemn me. At the end of the dream, I was apprehended by the police, and they took me into court. And the judge acquitted me. And I felt like such a fool, because for a whole year I've been running from what I was convinced was an angry judge that was waiting to condemn me, but he was actually waiting to acquit me. And I realized from the dream that many people who are trapped in sin, and I'm not just singling out the gay and lesbian community here, but people that are trapped in sin in general, that are running from God, so often they're not actually running from God. What they're running from is the inaccurate picture that we as Christ's ambassadors have painted for them of who God is. Many of them are running from an angry judge that's waiting to condemn them, but if they only knew that God was actually a loving Father that's waiting to embrace them, then maybe they wouldn't run. The next thing I want to talk about in relation to the question, how would Jesus love a homosexual, has to do with the way that we respond when we're attacked. In 1 Peter 3, it says, "Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult, but with kindness." Yet many of the gay and lesbian people, many of the Christians that I've seen respond to attacks from the gay and lesbian community have done so angrily. They've responded to attacks from the gay community with counterattacks, or at the very least, callous tones and an angry disposition. A few years ago, a good friend of mine gave a talk on a college campus about his own journey out of homosexuality. Towards the end of his message, he was interrupted by a swarm of angry lesbians. And these were not your typical lesbian activists. They were loud, they were angry, and they were determined to shut him down. So what my friend actually did was he was sitting on a platform kind of like this, and he actually jumped off his platform just like this, and he found himself standing eye to eye with the leader of this militant mob. And they were nose to nose, and she was chewing him out and cussing and screaming. And he waited till she was finished. And when she was finished, she kind of geared herself up to get screamed at like she was used to having happen whenever she did this kind of thing at Christian events. But instead, my mentor, Lenny, looked her in the eye. And he said, "Can I ask you a question?" And she said, "Yes." And Lenny said, "Can I give you a hug?" And Lenny actually wrote about what happened next. He said, "You should have seen the look on her face when I asked her that. When I wrapped my arms around her, I could just feel the anger subside as she realized that everything she had assumed about me and my message was wrong. She realized I really loved her. And a few seconds into the hug, she actually squeezed." See, guys, these moments of attack are actually the most effective ministry tools we possess. Love is never more potent than when it's shown in response to hatred. Most of the time when I speak on secular college campuses, the gay and lesbian people in attendance are very respectful during my talk. But when Q&A time comes, it gets a little bit heated. And it always comes down to one thing: politics. I mentioned earlier that gay and lesbian people have a really hard time believing they're loved by Christians who they perceive are on the wrong side of the battle for their own civil rights. And so when gay and lesbian students ask me if I'm in favor of gay rights, or if I'm in favor of gay marriage, or if I'm in favor of hate crimes, it's actually a litmus test, because they want to know, what they're really asking is, do you love me? And if you really love me, you'll prove it by saying that you're in favor of these political endeavors. And there's almost no way that they're ever really going to believe that I love them if I'm not in favor of their political endeavors. And I'm certainly not saying this applies to all gay people, but many, many times this happens to me.